On the 8th of November, the Carnival Horizon sliced across the calm Caribbean waters, carrying thousands of passengers seeking warmth, escape, and celebration. Among them was 18-year-old Anna Kepner, a girl from Titusville, Florida. Known for her bright smile, quit joke will feel instantly comfortable. For Anna, this cruise was supposed to be a short break before the next chapter of her life. Serving her country, she had already taken military entrance tests, chosen her career path, and told friends she was finally ready for the future. But before the ship ever reached its destination, that future was stolen. Sometime during the voyage, somewhere between the endless water and the ship's towering decks, Anna was found unresponsive. By the time help arrived, it was too late. The young girl who lit up every room was suddenly gone, leaving shockwaves among passengers and disbelief. Back home in Florida, when the ship returned to Port Miami that Saturday morning, the scene shifted from vacation joy to a federal investigation. FBI agents boarded immediately, a rare and serious step that raised even more questions. Cruise ship deaths are uncommon, and FBI involvement so quickly often signals that authorities see something suspicious, or at least unexplained enough to demand answers. Inside her hometown, grief spread faster than news updates. Her classmates at Temple Christian School decorated Anna's car with flowers and handwritten notes. Teachers remembered her as easy to talk to, someone who could make a sad person laugh without even trying. Family members described her as a people person, a girl who pushed herself to rise above challenges and dream bigger than her world. But as her loved ones mourned, investigators had a much colder task ahead of them. What really happened aboard that ship? Was this a tragic medical emergency or something far more unsettling? As the FBI began examining every corner of the Carnival Horizon, one detail started to unsettle experts and hinted that Anna's death may not have been an accident. When the FBI Miami field office boarded the Carnival Horizon, pavement in Burkine barriers whispering and recording the moment on their phones. Agents rarely step onto cruise ships unless a case falls under federal maritime jurisdiction, and that usually means there's a possibility of foul play. Though no details were publicly released, the speed and seriousness of their response told its own story. Inside the ship, investigators began the painstaking work of piecing together Anna's final hours. They examined security footage from dozens of cameras, interviewed passengers and crew members, and sealed off certain areas for forensic review. Every minute detail mattered. The timeline of where she was last seen, who she interacted with, and whether her behavior changed shortly before her death. They treated the case as potential wrongdoing until proven otherwise. Maritime attorney Nick Gerson explained that the FBA's involvement at this early stage often means something about the scene raises questions, something that must be answered before the ship can move on. Meanwhile, Carnival Cruise Line if you privating with the FBI of our guest and cooperating with the FBI. No confirmation of identity, no description of what happened, no cause of death. Silence can be comforting or terrifying. For Anna's family, it was both. Her parents, Chris and Chantal, along with her two younger sisters, waited desperately for updates. In strangers, classmates, teachers, and a community trying to make sense of an unimaginable loss. Back at Temple Christian School, students gathered around Anna's decorated car. Flowers, glittered posters, and Bible verses covered the windows. She would have made you laugh. One note read. But the darker question lingered. What happened in the hours between her laughter and the investigators' arrival? If this was an accident, what details released? And if it wasn't, who on that ship knew more than they were saying? As investigators dug deeper, they discovered a troubling reality about deaths at sea, one that could change everything about how Anna's case is handled. As the hours turned into days, the investigation into Anna Kepner's death became more complicated, not because of what authorities found, but because of what they couldn't easily uncover. Maritime law is a world of its own, filled with loopholes and old statutes that make tragedies at sea uniquely difficult to solve. One of the biggest challenges investigators faced was an old federal law most people have never heard of, the Death on the High Seas Act, a statute dating back to the 1920s. It limits how much information cruise lines must reveal publicly and restricts what families can claim when a death occurs in international waters. In other words, unlike crimes on land, deaths at sea often happen in shadow, and the truth can remain floating somewhere between jurisdictions. Attorney Nick Gerson explained it clearly. If something happens on a cruise ship, you can't just walk into a police station and request a report. You usually have to go to federal court to get answers. This reality hit Anna's family harder than anything. Their daughter had left home with dreams of serving her country, but now they were fighting a legal system just to learn how she died. While her mother, friends, and younger sister shared happy memories, her jokes, her warmth, her love for people, the investigation remained swirling online. Passengers speculated about everything from a medical emergency to possible foul play. Without official information, theories filled the gaps, and each theory pulled Anna's family into deeper pain. But behind closed doors, federal investigators weren't wasting time. They analyzed security footage frame by frame. They reviewed Anna's movements, her phone activity, and every interactions who might have seen or heard something unusual. They even looked into structural locations on the ship that could have played a role in her death. Despite all this, officials released no updates to the public, not a cause, not a location, not a timeline, and one question grew louder. If this death was straightforward, why was the investigation so unusually secretive? When the Carnival Horizon finally docked in Miami, the ship's engines fell silent, but the investigation roared to life. Federal agents moved quickly, retrieving sealed evidence, device logs, and witness statements collected during the voyage. Their task wasn't just to determine how Anna Kepner died, but whether her death could have been prevented and whether anyone on board knew more than they admitted. The port became a maze of uniforms, clipboards, and guarded conversations. Investigators worked in teams, comparing what the ship reported with what passengers described, and slowly, a clearer picture began to form, not from dramatic revelations, but from inconsistencies, silence, and missing details. One of the first revelations concerned the timeline. Passengers gave varying accounts of when Anna was last seen. Some remembered her laughing with friends earlier in the day. Others recalled seeing her alone. A few mentioned unusual activity in certain areas of the ship, but nothing definitive. Investigators also noticed gaps in the ship's internal reporting, moments where procedures weren't followed as strictly as policy demands. In typical medical emergencies, cruise lines release basic statements. Here, the cause of death was withheld entirely, and even the location where Anna was found remained undisclosed. Such secrecy can indicate ongoing suspicion or a need to prevent misinformation while investigators verify every detail. Back in Titusville, Anna's family waited in the agonizing silence that follows sudden loss. Her classmates continued to decorate her car with flowers and memories. Her school held gatherings, and community members prayed for answers. They remembered her dreams, entering the military, helping her community, living a life bigger than the small Florida town where she grew up. As investigators pieced together their findings, one thing became painfully clear. This case would take time, patience, and persistence. Deaths on the high seas rarely offer easy truths. They require navigating legal barriers, corporate policies, and federal protocols, all while respecting a grieving family's need for closure. The Carnival Horizon resumed its operations, leaving behind a trail of questions still unanswered. But for Anna's family, classmates, and community, one hope remains: that the truth, whatever it may be, will surface, and justice will follow. AR Haig Afrang, even as the investigation continues. Experts warn that cases like Anna's expulsion major gaps in cruise ship safety, gaps that may need to change before another tragedy occurs.